we had already completed the first three Excel files. The fourth Excel file is around the business valuation concept. So what I'm going to do, so today we will cover the other financial model, and tomorrow in this financial model also I have to cover the business valuation. So once we discuss that, then I'll come back to the version number 4 of the Kia model and talk about the valuation. Great. Okay, I think we can get started. A very warm welcome to all of you. And before I move on, just let me know in case you have any questions on whatever we discussed in the last session, and then we'll get started. So, Richie, I see you have some questions, please. Now, if you have some questions, you can ask me right now related to the Kia model. We can spend the first 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to discuss those queries before moving on to the next financial model case study. All right. Richie, please go on. In the file number 3, there was some percentage cost in networking, which we calculated, but okay. So basically, what I understand, Richie, you're referring to the percentage of networking cost, which was related to the regular run and maintenance related costs. So that cost, if I understand, you're talking about 10% of the overall networking cost, or maybe 15% of the costs to be paid as AMC, right? Yeah, correct. So basically, what we did, it's basically the AMC that we are going to pay, or maybe regular repair and maintenance costs that we would incur related to the network access related fixed assets part. So what we typically do is, if we have to figure out the run and maintenance related cost, it has to be specific to that particular component, because your total cost would also have the employee cost related component. So it wouldn't make sense to compute a percentage which is on the total number, because that would have a couple of those factors which are not directly related to that cost. So let's say if you're talking about repair and maintenance of the building, then you wouldn't compare it to the percentage. You wouldn't take a percentage of the total cost, which includes your employee cost and the other cost elements as well. So we try and pick that percentage as a percentage of the relevant cost item, the line item which actually is related to that part. So that's why we took a percentage of that particular cost only instead of taking the total cost. So this percentage, so Abhijit, to your point, and Richard will answer your question as well. So basically what happens is, when you build the model, at that point in time, you would have a broad idea and understanding as to what is the typical cost that I'm going to incur. So let's take an example. Let's take a rudimentary example. Say I buy a refrigerator costing me 50,000 rupees. Now I'm going to take an AMC. So when the AMC is computed, it is computed on the amount which is being, which is being covered under the maintenance contract. So what we do, each and every company would have a broad computation mechanism that if it is a 50,000 rupees of refrigerator, then the approximate cost that we might incur could be so and so. So that's the basis for them to arrive at that percent. So there is no fixed formula that every time it is going to be 10%, 15%, or 30%. It's basically considering the fact that what is the expected cost that we would incur, and then we try and translate that as some percentage. So if I take the same example, the refrigerator is costing me 50,000 rupees. And I believe that if the company is going to give me that AMC, then it is expecting that it will have to spend roughly about 10,000 rupees in terms of repair maintenance and the regular preventive maintenance related work. So it will say that it's going to be 20% of the cost. So that's how you basically determine the percentage and take it only on that particular part. But yeah, agree, in the manufacturing operations, Abhijit, definitely this percentage is a difficult task. But when you are doing that business for quite some time, you have the historical data to support the numbers. So if the company has been, let's go back to the same example. If the company has already been selling their refrigerators in past, it would know that if 100 people buy a refrigerator and take the AMC, only 5 of them or 10 of them actually encounter that problem. and the extent of loss that we incur, the extent of cost that we incur is so and so. So they kind of spread it across all the buyers. So that's the computation method. Is you all right? Okay, I hope this makes sense. We can proceed now. Great, thank you. So let us move ahead. Now, what we are going to talk about today is we will be working upon a financial modeling case study, which is related to a camera manufacturing company. So let us first understand what financial model structure is all about. Then we'll read the case study and proceed further with the financial model creation. Right? So let me actually open the first file and I can write the notes over there itself. So please open the file number one, which is par01 CMC. So CMC out here is the camera manufacturing company. So please open the first file. So let me show you the typical financial model structure as to how it typically looks like. So whenever we have to create a financial model, as we already discussed in the last session when we were discussing this concept of modeling, I highlighted this fact that typically whenever a model needs to be created, then we usually talk about creating the future financial projection. So typically what happens is we would begin with certain set of inputs and assumptions. So we would begin with the inputs. We would first of all begin with inputs, which would cover the set of assumptions and inputs for the for creating the financial projections. This is what we typically do, that whenever we have to create a financial model, we would essentially start with the set of inputs and assumptions that we have taken for that particular business model, which we expect that this business will see in future. Right? So it's more of an estimate. Then we go to the workings part. Then we cover the workings part, wherein we see, wherein we create a lot of workings related to revenue. We identify the revenue drivers. We identify the operating cost drivers. Then we also identify the capital expenditure related plan as to what is going to be my fixed assets component. And it would also help us figure out what is the depreciation expense for a company. Then we cover the funding structure as to what kind of debt and equity the company is going to have. So what proportion it is going to raise in terms of debt. So what's the debt profile and equity structure. And if you have any other computation, you could do that as well. Any other calculation. So this is essentially what we cover in the working part. And once we've got the working in place, then we can go to the final section, which is output, which is nothing but an integrated set of financial statements covering the P&L, balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. So this is what we essentially cover in the financial model. Whenever we have to create a financial model, we basically talk about creating all of that, right? So what do we do? How do we approach creating a financial model from the scratch? If I have to, create a model like this, then how do I work upon a financial model which essentially covers all of these elements and covers the integration between all of these items? Because what we have seen out here is that if you begin with certain inputs and assumptions, you would use it for computing certain factors which are part of your working section, and finally these are used for creating the set of financial statements covering P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. So what do we typically do? This is how a typical financial model map looks like, right? This is how the typical financial model map is going to look like. So let us create a financial model which starts with the set of inputs and assumptions. work which we use to work upon the related schedules, and finally we would flow the result to the output. Now, how this financial model case study that we're going to discuss today different from the one that we discussed in the last session. So, in the last session, when I talked about the Kia financial model, that was a synopsis of the overall financial model, or I would say that it was giving a bird's eye view of how a financial model could be created. But it was not a complete financial model, because I made the statement over there as well that we were only trying to create the P&L of that particular company, which is like creating the P&L projections. But today, we are not just going to talk about the P&L, but we would also cover the balance sheet, which talks about the financial position of the company, and also the stream of cash flows impacting that particular business, right? So let's get started and see how we can create this financial model. Now, what we have done, we have got 11 files, so which we are going to be using for creating this financial model. And given the way we have to structure it, we have created these files in a stepwise manner, very similar to what we did in the Kia financial model. We'll do it over here as well. That as you move to the version number 2, you would find that the version number 1 solution is already included. So the moment we gradually move on to the version number 11, you would have the complete financial model created in that particular file. And as part of that process, get to know what is the typical process which is followed for creating a financial model from scratch, because it will provide you a sense of the chronology that you must follow for building that financial model in Excel. All right, so let us proceed ahead and read a bit about the case study before moving on to the financial model case. So let me walk you through with the case study. So this case study is about camera manufacturing company. What we are going to do in this case, we are going to see how to create a financial model by using the best practices of the financial model. So this is about a company called Sports, which is into the manufacturing of sports camera. So the name of the company is CMC, which is called Camera Manufacturing Company, and it entered the market roughly about 3 years ago, and it has been doing its business in past for the last 3 years, generating good amount of profit. It's quite profitable, and now what it is expecting to do, it has decided to file for an IPO. So what they have done, let's say this is a US based company and they are going for the S1 filing. So typically in the US, when you go for any company decides to go for an IPO, then they have to provide the historical data points which are related to the historical performance of the company, and at the same time also create the projections for the next couple of years. So over here we have I see that my voice is not very clear. Can I just request everyone to please confirm if you're able to hear me well? All right. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So what I was talking about, that in this case, as the company has entered this business 3 years back and now looking to file for an IPO, it has submitted the filing to the relevant authority. And here is the extract of the historical financial performance of this organization. So what we need to do over here is we need to work upon the financial model for the next couple of years and then use it for the valuation purpose, just to be able to see that what is the fair price to be paid for that particular company's share. All right. So this is the P&L, historical P&L, and as you can see, the company generating revenue from cameras and also accessories. So it is selling not only the sports camera but also the accessories related to it, maybe the camera bag, camera lens, camera chargers, and the related stuff is also being sold by it. So these are the two sources from which this company is generating revenue. And corresponding to that, as you can see, the broad elements of the operating cost that this company has got is around the raw material cost that it needs for manufacturing those cameras and accessories. Number two, the typical research and development related costs that the company keeps on incurring to be able to develop the product that it is selling. And then it is also spending good amount of money on the sales and marketing to be able to generate visibility of the product. And finally, there are some general and administration expenses related to the office cost and other overheads, right? So that gives the operating income EBITDA, from which we deduct the depreciation and interest expense, and finally taxes to arrive at net profit. So we will see how we work upon it, and similarly, we also have the balance sheet of this company over here. So what we need to do, we need to create a model using these inputs and assumptions. Now, before I talk about this particular, the future expectation as to how the company's business is going to look like, I want to first of all complete the historical data, do the analysis, and then come back to this sheet to be able to see what projections we are going to make, what kind of assumptions and inputs we're going to take. So we'll come back to this and revisit this particular slide at that point in time. All right, so let's proceed with the first Excel file that we have, wherein we would be creating the historical P&L and the balance sheet. So please open file number 1. Please open file number 1. Now, when you look at this particular model, you would also need to see the way we are proceeding. So maybe once we are done, I'll list out the steps that we will follow. But also, you also please focus on this part, that how we are proceeding in terms of creating a model. Like step number 1, we are trying to look at the historical P&L and balance sheet. Step number 2, we would analyze it further. We would try and figure out certain ratios and trends from the past data. And then we will move on to the projections part. So that's the sequence which we are using. Right? So let us get started. Here we have the historical P&L. So let's put the relevant formulas and missing points here. So this company, as I said, started its operation in 2016, and it has been last 3 years that it's working. So the historical data is for the period 2016 to 18. And here we have the revenue data. So I have got the revenue from cameras and revenue from accessories. So let us figure out the total of this. As I discussed this trick in the last class as well, but just to do a recap, if you need to put a formula in one cell, and then you have to copy and paste it on the right hand side in that particular row, then instead of doing it in 2 steps, you have an option to do it in one single step itself. That the steps to enter the same formula in a range of cells. So what you could do, number 1, you could select the range wherein the result is required, and 2, write the formula in the first active cell, and 3, press Control Enter. This is basically a shortcut that you could use for writing the same formula in a continuous range of cells. And usually in the financial models, you would find that we work on various years. So we may have to write this kind of a formula pretty often. So let's say over here, I want to write a formula over here. So I'm going to first of all select the range wherein this result is required. And then I'm going to write the formula in the first active cell as a sum of these 2 cells. And last step is press Control and Enter. So don't release the Control button when you're going to press the Enter key. So it gives you the same formula in the entire range of cells that you would have selected. Let's do it again. So operating cost, I've got in these 3 years. So I'm going to select this overall range, provide the formula in the first year, and press Control and Enter, which you see that is showing the result in the entire range of cells. So this is how you could write the formula in one single cell and automatically copy and paste it across on the right hand side. So what's the EBITDA? EBITDA is operating income, which is nothing but revenue minus operating cost. So I'm going to take row number 7, which has the total revenue, minus row number 14, which has the operating cost. So press Control Enter, it gives you the EBITDA figure out here. Vishak, you're saying the Control Enter is not working in your, no, it should ideally work. Are you, so what you need to do, you need to press Control and then do not release that Control key, right? So when you press Control, keep on pressing that, don't release it, and then press Enter. So that when you are going to press Control Enter, it basically covers both things at the same time. So the way to do this is that press Control and then Don't release that button and press enter so that both the keys are being pressed at the same time. And the way I'm selecting the range, Abhijit, it's just a simple selection like this, right? And then I'm writing this formula like EBITDA minus depreciation, then control enter. So this is how it is working out here. Then we've got the taxes, which is EBIT minus taxes, EBIT minus interest, and now we have to subtract the tax, which is going to be 6 minus 2, which gives us net profit after tax. So this is how you could basically include the relevant formula out here. So yeah, Manmita, we could also press Alt equal to. So Alt equal to is more for the sum, auto sum. But if you need to write any other formula like a subtraction, a multiplication, or writing any other formula, then the trick is that you select the range, you write it manually and press Control Enter. So obviously Alt equal to will work fine if you just have to do the summation. That's how it is. Right. So let me read a couple of more questions that we have, and till the time, in the meanwhile, you can work upon your sheet. Okay, Dipankar, I see you have asked a question related to the approach that we follow for making assumptions. So actually, I'm going to cover that part in the subsequent file when we will cover the assumptions sheet. But yeah, broadly to answer your point, your question is around that how do we basically work out those assumptions? What is the basis for us? So we look at not only the historical data of the company which we are trying to uh, use for the projection purpose, we could also look at the data for the overall industry, the kind of market share that our company has got, and how the other companies in the same industry are performing in the industry. So these kind of inputs would give you a little bit of probability as to what is the probable market share that you would be able to gather and what is the expected revenue that you could generate out of it. So that's like the typical structure which the companies tend to follow for identifying the market that they would be able to tap. And that usually translates to the quantitative number, which flows into the financial model, right? So that's how it typically works. Amanpreet, I'll come to your point. Why 5 years? Why not 10 years? I'll come to the next. I'll come to this part when we'll speak about the projections. But again, to briefly answer your point, um, to briefly answer this point, actually, there is no standard that you have to create a financial model for only 5 years. I covered this part in the Kia financial model also. So, why we create 5 years? Because usually most of the companies tend to work upon a long-term strategy, a long-term business plan, so which is usually a 5-year vision document. So most of the time you would see that the financial models are created for 5 years, but I am not saying that you would only create it for 5 years. If you talk about a startup company, there is quite a bit of possibility that in the next 5 years, when you try and show the projections, you might notice that the company would still be incurring losses or the company would hardly break even in the fourth year or fifth year of its operation. So in that case, it would really make sense to actually extend that business model to probably 7 years or 10 years as well, so that you can get a better clarity as to how our stabilized operations are going to look like. Right? But to be honest, what happens is as you move ahead in terms of more number of years to be captured, the quality of the assumptions would be compromised because even if I am working on a model and that model is for my own company, it would be pretty difficult for me to visualize how my business is going to look like 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line. It is slightly difficult. We can still work out better assumptions for the next 1 year or 2 years, but then going beyond 3 years, 4 years, 5 years would typically be a kind of a compromise with the quality of inputs and assumptions that we take for the model. All right. Can I just request everyone to please keep yourself on mute? Thank you. All right. So This sheet essentially talks about the historical P&L. Now let's look at the historical balance sheet as well and see that how the historical financial position of the company was looking like. So we've got the liabilities and we've got the liabilities and equity section here to begin with, and then we've got the assets part. So let's see what are the liabilities that the company has got. So it has zero overdraft. There's nothing which is in overdraft. Accounts payable related to the creditors that we've got in the company, accrued liabilities, deferred revenue. So we'll talk about all of that as we proceed further. So what's the total current liabilities and provisions that the company has created? Let's take the summation of all of that and put it across over here. So that's the total current liabilities and provision. Then you have total non-current liabilities, which covers your debt component, covering your secured loan, unsecured loan, and the related stuff. So you can see that this company has not raised any secured loan. It raised a $200 million unsecured loan in the year 2016, which reduced to 190 probably on account of repayment, and then again increased to 380, which means that the company took a fresh loan in the year 2018. So that's how the debt position is looking like in this company. Then we have the shareholders' equity, which includes two parts. Now, if any of these terms are not clear to you, just be with me for some more time, because when we proceed further, I will be talking about each and every line individually, because we have to project each of these line items. So I would be talking about all of that one by one. So just be with me for some time and we'll come back to that particular line. So here the essence is only to put the relevant data points for the historical period. That's it. So the shareholder equity would usually cover the paid up capital equity infusion which has happened in the company, and also the retained earnings which are there in this organization. So when you take all of that together, it gives you the shareholder equity. And now we could add all of these numbers to be able to see what is the total liabilities and equity. What is the total liability and equity component? So we had 384 as a total in the first year, which is now increased to a balance sheet size of $911 million. So that's on the liabilities part. Let's have a look at the assets component itself as well. We've got current assets out here as cash, accounts receivable, inventory, etc. So let's take the sum of current assets. That's the first part, which is the current asset. The second part is the non-current assets, which usually covers your fixed asset component. So we have a gross block or gross fixed assets of 200, which we depreciated to the extent of 20. So we are left with 180, and that's the formula that you proceed or you put in the subsequent cells as well. So we've got the current assets and non-current assets covering the fixed assets part. When you combine these two, you're going to see the total assets component. So the total assets would essentially be equal to the sum of total current assets, total non-current assets, and this WIP component is also here. So we would take that, though it is zero, but it is basically the capital work in progress. It is capital work in progress. So what capital work in progress is all about? It's basically the component of the work, a component of the fixed assets which has not been completed as of now. So sometimes what happens is we buy a machine which is ready to use, that will be categorized under the fixed assets component. However, in some cases we may not buy a machine, ready-made machine from the market, but instead we get that fabricated in our site. So we get the raw material, we get the parts, and we get that assembled within our factory or the plant. So in that case, till the time our machine is under construction, it is called the capital work in progress, and it cannot be clubbed together with the fixed assets, because we want to show it separately that this component is still under progress. We cannot use it for the manufacturing purpose right now, so it is actually not part of the fixed assets as of today. So that's called the working capital, or the work in progress amount. So you could usually see this term the balance sheet, which is also called as CWIP. So instead of just being called as WIP, CWIP is another name that you would see for it, right? Okay, so Richie, to your point, let me explain that again. So basically, what happens is that let's say this company which is manufacturing the cameras. For manufacturing cameras, you need a plant, you need a machinery which would help you manufacture it. Now that machinery is technically called a fixed asset component for the company. But sometimes I may not decide to buy that ready-made fixed asset from the market. I may decide to basically procure the parts and get it assembled at my site, at my factory, because of certain reasons. There could also be a possibility that the size of the plant is so huge that it cannot be purchased ready-made and be transported. So we are forced to buy it in pieces and then get that assembled in our site. So till the time the fixed asset is being manufactured, you could call it that way. The fixed asset is under construction, right? That particular phase, we would have the capital work in progress, which is called CWIP, which means that that particular plant is under progress. It's not ready to be used as of today for the purpose of manufacturing, but it will be ready after some time. So once it will be ready, I will transfer the amount from CWIP to the fixed assets component. But till that time, I can't actually use the fixed assets account for booking that cost, because right now that asset is not completed. So it is wrong to call it as a fixed asset because it cannot be used for production purpose in the company. It is only under progress. So that's why it is uh, that's why it is basically shown separately. But the moment it is completed, we will transfer the entire amount back to the balance sheet. That's how it works. So Dipankar, it will be balanced against equity. So actually, the entry for this would be that when you spend something on CWIP, it is basically it is basically going to entail a payment of cash. So when you buy something, you pay cash. So the cash is reduced and the capital work in progress increases. In case there is a liability, in case there is a credit that you are getting, then the liabilities would go up and capital work in progress would also go up. So that's how these two line items would match with each other, and it will tally the balance sheet. Okay, so Richie, to your point, you're saying that if it is like a software company, a software taking 3 years to no, see, the software is slightly different. Software is an intangible asset that we are trying to create, right? So intangible asset is basically the component which we can't touch, but we are just trying to create, which may take some amount of time. So the IT company, which may spend some time to develop the intangible assets, something like a software, would also, keep on spending some amount for next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to be able to get that component. So what happens in that case is it's an intangible asset that it is creating. So any amount that we spend will be clubbed under the intangible asset category, not under the capital work in progress. Capital work in progress is specifically to a hard machine, which is basically something which forms part of your tangible asset. Right? So capital work in progress is tangible. So in our case of CNC, it will basically be the machine that we need for manufacturing the cameras. Because if we have to manufacture cameras, we have to manufacture the accessories. So that case, whatever amount we are spending on manufacturing that particular machine will be part of your capital work in progress. But we do not show it in pieces. What we do is, yeah, Richie, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question, that would be better.
So my question is, in our case of camera manufacturing company, if the total cost which is to be divided in 3 years, like 100 million in each year, then the first year will be showing only 100 million in the asset side and 200 million in the capital work in progress, or it is otherwise?
No, that's not right. So basically, when you say we will be spending 300, is
Hmm.
this 300 the amount that you intend to spend on procuring that machinery.
Definitely, like assembling it at our site.
So basically, whatever amount you keep on spending will be added to the capital work in progress. So let's say if in the first year you spent only 100, then
Okay.
100 will be shown in CWIP. Next
Nothing
year
in the
you again
assets.
spend nothing in the, so this basic
Okay.
part of the assets only. So first year you
Got it.
spend 100, you will show it here. Next year you spend additional 50, it will become 150 now. Third
Definitely.
year
Got
you
it.
spend 200, so it will be 150 plus 200, 350 out here. And then you say my asset is completed, the entire 350 will be zero, and you will transfer it to the gross block.
Okay, understood, understood, understood. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
But this will not be in case of software you're saying.
Yeah, software
Maybe.
is more like intangible. Software is an intangible.
Okay.
For first year,
Capital work in progress
if-
is more to do with the tangible component of it.
What if in the first year you're acquiring a land?
Mhm.
So let's say out of the 300, 100 was used to acquire the land, right?
Okay.
You have acquired the land. Now, in the second year, would that 100 not become a part of your asset?
No. So basically, land is a different ball game altogether. Whenever you buy a piece of land and you want to have a building constructed on it, the land is an asset which is usually shown separately because of other reasons also. Because land is one of those assets which would never depreciate, right? We don't apply depreciation on it. So the moment you buy land, it will become part of your non-current assets, and the land will be shown at the cost at the amount at which you bought it.
So
When
the
you construct building on it, let's say you have to construct a building on it. Let's say we talk about a hotel company.
yes,
This company which has purchased a piece of land and it's going to take 3 years of time to construct the hotel on it. Now, whatever amount we are going to spend on the construction of hotel will be shown in the capital work in progress. And the moment
Okay.
the hotel construction is completed, you will transfer it from the capital work in progress to the or the fixed assets component in that case, right? So if $100 million is the amount that you spent for buying that land, then right from show it in land. Then you spend, let's say, $50 million in the first year for building the hotel, then that 50 million will be shown in work in progress. Next year, you spend some more amount, let's say additional 100. So that 100 again would be shown in the capital work in progress. And the third year, if you have completed your construction and now your hotel is completed, the entire amount which is lying in the capital work in progress account will be moved to the fixed assets, and the capital work in progress account will be made zero. Because now after the hotel is constructed, the construction is completed, now I can use it for my regular operations. But before that, I could not use it. So till the time I could not use it, it was part of my capital work in progress, but now I can use it, it will be part of my fixed assets.
so one more small question in this example itself. Like whatever other operating costs we incurred to construct the hotel will be also added to capital work in progress, or
Will be added to the capital work in progress.
Okay.
Because any cost, irrespective of the original nature of the cost,
Right.
if it is being spent during the construction stage, specifically related to that project, we would capitalize it. We would take
Got
it as
it.
part of our fixed assets.
Got it, got it. Okay.
All right. So let us
One
move on.
question. So you said land, I mean, the land cost will be part of land, but what I understand is when we are doing a construction on a land, so the total amount should be in the part of capital work in progress, right? The land amount as well as the construction of the building.
No,
The land cannot be separated.
No, typically in the balance sheet, land and buildings are shown separately. So land is usually a different asset and building is a different line of asset. The reason for showing it separately is the land does not attract the depreciation while building attracts depreciation. So I may want to depreciate the building over a period of 25 years, 30 years, but the land is never depreciated as part of accounting policy. Because usually we have seen in past that it tends to appreciate and only building is the component which tends to depreciate. So that's the reason why we show land and building separately in the balance sheet. So you don't have the land component as part of your capital work in progress.
Okay, but when the whole construction is completed, then the land and the capital work in progress will be part of the gross block, or it will be still
They
separate?
will be part of the gross block, but within the gross block you will show two different lines. One is land and the other is building. right?
Okay, because what I see is
Land is going to be so Richie mentioned it right in the comment that land is our fixed assets right from day one, because there is nothing extra that I need to do on the land. Land is never taken as part of your capital working progress, right? So under the gross block, you will have the completed assets, which would obviously include the land component, and then you would have the capital work in progress, which would eventually be clubbed under the buildings line in the fixed assets component. Does that make sense?
I mean, when we do a valuation of a building, so it includes a valuation of the land and the building, right? And
That is
it
a different valuation is a different part altogether. Right now, I'm talking about the presentation. Right?
Okay.
When you look at the presentation in the balance sheet, you show land as a separate line, building is, because if you club both
Okay.
of them together, then you don't know which particular component is going to attract depreciation. So because we have to apply depreciation only on the piece which is other than land, so I must show it separate. So from a presentation standpoint, within the gross block, you would always see land as a separate line and other fixed assets separate.
Got it, Amaldeep. Yeah,
But
thank you.
from the valuation standpoint, obviously it's slightly different. From a valuation standpoint, the valuation of the real estate is done slightly differently, depending on how we are going to use it. Are we going to use it for the purpose of generating income, or we are going to just hold it for the purpose of being sold as a land bank and an asset to somebody else? So that's how we decide going to do the valuation, because it depends on the use for which it is being held by the company. For a company which is in the business of selling homes, like selling flats and all that stuff, by constructing the buildings for them, the flat is a normal inventory, right? But somebody who is actually like I took an example of a hotel, or let's say we take an example of a mall, a commercial property. For them, the purpose is just to hold that piece of asset and generate rental income out of it. For them, it is slightly different. So the valuation is determined by the end use of that particular asset. That's how we see what best method of valuation to be applied. All right. So
Thank you, Amaldeep.
so let's come back and please open the file number 2. Let's do the historical analysis of these items and then we'll move on to the projection part. So please open file number 2.